My own teachers forced me into a horrifying punishment march that was caught on camera. It happened last summer, during a heat wave so intense it felt like the world was cooking from the inside out. That experience, the one I'm about to tell you, left a permanent mark on me. It made me realize that sometimes, the most terrifying monsters are the people you're supposed to trust. It also got me wondering, how many other people had their summer stolen by some kind of real, unexplainable horror? I started asking for your stories and the ones you sent back were chilling. What you're about to hear are 5 allegedly true stories, submitted by viewers who, like me, say they survived the terrifying summer of 2025. These aren't just campfire tales. They feel grounded in a reality that's often far more frightening than any fiction. My story is first, and it's the reason this video even exists. This story is my own. I was a student at a high school in the Houston area, and last summer still feels like a fever dream I can't quite wake up from. June of 2025 was brutal. It wasn't just hot, it was oppressive. The air was thick and wet, and the sun beat down with a personal vengeance. You'd walk outside and feel your energy just drain in seconds. School was winding down, and that usual chaotic energy filled the hallways. Kids were restless, teachers were exhausted, and the final bell felt a lifetime away. I was never a troublemaker. I kept my head down, did my work, and counted the days, till summer break like everyone else. But there were 3 teachers at our school who had a reputation. They weren't the cool teachers or the strict but fair ones. They were just off. There was this nervous energy about them, like they were always on the edge. They'd snap over tiny things and their eyes would get this wide, frantic look. We all knew to tread carefully around them, but we were kids. We were loud, sometimes dumb, and the heat was making everyone's fuse shorter. That day the AC in half the school was failing. The classrooms were like saunas. A few of us were in the gym, which was only a little cooler, waiting for a final assembly. We were probably being too loud, just messing around, tossing a basketball. Nothing crazy. But then they appeared. The 3 of them. They weren't even supposed to be on duty in the gym. They walked in together like a pack and the energy just died. The joking stopped. One of them, a tall, gaunt man with huge sweat stains under his arms, snatched the basketball right out of the air. His hands were shaking. He pointed at me and 4 other students. He didn't say what we'd done wrong. He just said, "You 5. Outside. Now." The other 2 teachers, a man and a woman, flanked the door, blocking it. Their faces were totally blank, but their eyes were burning. It felt less like we were in trouble and more like we'd been chosen for something. We were marched out to the blacktop track around the football field. The heat hit you like a punch. The sun was blinding, reflecting off the dark surface, and the air smelled like melting rubber. There was zero shade. The lead teacher just pointed to the track. "Walk," he said, his voice all raspy. "Just walk." We figured it was a punishment lap. Annoying, but whatever. We started walking. After the first lap, dripping with sweat, we looked back at the teachers, expecting them to wave us inside. They just stood there watching us. The female teacher had her arms crossed, and the other 2 stood with their hands on their hips, like generals. "Keep going," one of them yelled. So we did another lap. And another. After the 3rd, one of the other kids, Mark, called out, "Okay, we get it. Can we go in now?" The gaunt teacher strode right up to him. For a second, I thought he was going to hit him. Instead, he leaned in close and just screamed, his voice cracking, "You will walk until we tell you to stop. You do not speak. You do not stop." That's when the real fear started to creep in. This wasn't just a punishment. This was something else. It was personal and it was completely unhinged. We kept walking. The sun was relentless. I could feel my skin burning. Sweat poured into my eyes, stinging them. My breathing got shallow. We walked in a single file line, heads down, the silence between us thick with a shared, unspoken terror. We didn't dare look at each other. We just focused on the cracked black track, 1 foot in front of the other. An hour passed. It felt like a lifetime. My legs ached. My throat was so dry it felt like sandpaper. Another student stumbled, and one of the teachers barked at him to get up and keep moving. No water. No break. Just the endless, searing loop under that white-hot sky. Then it got worse. One of the teachers came back with a roll of silver duct tape. He tore off a piece and marched over to the kid who'd complained earlier. He grabbed him by the chin and slapped the tape right over his mouth. The kid's eyes went wide with panic. Muffled noises came out, but the teacher just stared him down until he went silent and kept walking. Then they did it to the rest of us. They came for me, and I remember the chemical smell of the adhesive, the rough tape on my lips. It was a feeling of complete helplessness. My hands were trembling, but I didn't dare fight back. They bound our hands behind our backs with the same tape, pulling it so tight it bit into my wrists. Now we were prisoners. We couldn't talk. We couldn't wipe the sweat from our faces. We just had to shuffle forward, bound and gagged, while these three adults watched us suffer. Their expressions were a bizarre mix of intense focus and a kind of chilling satisfaction. I looked up at one point and saw their wild eyes, the way they'd pace, yelling at us to keep up the pace. It was a twisted game they had invented, and we were trapped in it. I don't know how long we were out there. The official report said it was over 4 hours. I lost all track of time. The world became a dizzying blur of heat, pain, and fear. I started to get lightheaded. The edges of my vision went dark. I remember thinking, I'm going to pass out. I'm going to fall, and they're just going to leave me here to cook on this track. That thought was more terrifying than anything, the thought of being completely at their mercy. What we didn't know was that our bizarre, horrifying punishment march was being seen. The school's CCTV cameras on the roof were recording every minute. Another teacher, leaving for the day, saw us and knew something was terribly wrong. They didn't confront the three teachers. They were too scared. Instead, they went straight to the principal's office and made the call. I remember the moment it ended. It was sudden. Police cars and an ambulance came screeching onto the campus. The three teachers seemed to snap out of whatever trance they were in. They looked around, confused, like they were waking up. They didn't run. They just stood there as officers approached. We were freed. The tape was cut off. The feeling of cool water from a bottle a paramedic gave me was the best thing I have ever felt in my life. We were all treated for severe dehydration and heat exhaustion. One kid had second-degree burns on his shoulders. The aftermath was a blur of police reports and angry parents. The three teachers were fired immediately and faced criminal charges. The school district issued statements. But none of it could erase what happened. They never gave a clear reason. Their lawyers talked about stress and burnout, but that doesn't explain the duct tape or the 4 hours they forced us to walk in the blazing sun. It doesn't explain the feeling of being hunted by the people who were supposed to protect you. I still have nightmares about it. I feel the Texas sun on my skin and the phantom sensation of duct tape on my mouth. I know now that the line between sane and insane can be terrifyingly thin, and sometimes it just snaps on a hot summer afternoon for no reason at all. That experience left me wondering how many others had their own summer nightmares. The kind of stories that don't make sense. So I asked, and the stories that came flooding and confirmed my darkest suspicions. The world is filled with strange, dark events, and sometimes they happen in the most ordinary of places. If you've ever had an experience you just can't explain, an encounter that still makes the hair on your arms stand up, do me a favor and hit that like button. And if you want to hear more stories like these, subscribe to the channel because you are in the right place. This next story comes from a viewer in Islamabad, Pakistan, who lived through a summer of fear after a tragedy struck their neighborhood. This story comes from a viewer named Ali, and it took place in Islamabad, Pakistan's capital. He said he submitted this because the heat of last summer will now forever be tied to the sound of screams in the night, and the chilling realization that a wall isn't enough to keep evil out. He writes, "My neighborhood in Islamabad is usually quiet. It's the kind of place where everyone knows each other, at least by sight. In the summer, especially during the suffocating heat of June 2025, life slows down. The nights are for seeking any small breeze, and people leave their windows open, hoping for relief. We did that too. We never thought twice about it. Down the street from me lived the Yusuf family. They had a daughter, Sana. She was young, only 17, and full of life. Many of us knew her from her online presence. She was a rising star on TikTok with hundreds of thousands of followers who loved her short videos. She had this bright, infectious smile, and it felt like she had a promising future. In the last video she ever posted, she was celebrating her birthday, cutting a cake, looking happier than ever. That was just hours before it happened. It was the beginning of June. The night was unbearably hot and still. Sometime after midnight, I was woken up by a sound. At first, I thought it was a car backfiring, a muffled pop that didn't immediately register as dangerous. I remember lying in bed, annoyed, and then I heard it. A woman's scream. It wasn't a scream of surprise. It was pure, unfiltered terror. The kind of sound that bypasses your ears and goes straight to your bones. I sat bolt upright in bed. My heart was hammering. More shouting followed. Lights started flicking on in the houses around us. We all peered out our windows into the dark. The screaming was coming from the Yusuf's house. Someone had already called the police. We could hear the sirens getting closer. A small crowd of us gathered in the street, watching the house with a terrible sense of dread. When the police arrived, they went in. A few minutes later, paramedics rushed in with a stretcher. When they came out, there was a small figure under a white sheet. They weren't rushing anymore. Sanaa's mother was there, her face a mask of grief. The sound she was making was no longer a scream, but a low, guttural wail. We would learn the horrifying details over the next few days. A man had broken into Sanaa's home. She was alone in her room when he confronted her with a pistol and shot her twice in the chest. Her aunt, who was also in the house, was the one who mistook the gunshots for a balloon popping. The man even tried to shoot her as well, but the gun misfired and he fled into the night. Neighbors tried to rush Sanaa to the hospital, but it was too late. She was gone. The police investigation was swift. They caught the man, 22-year-old Umar Hayat, in another city. The motive sent a fresh wave of terror through our community. He had been stalking her online. He'd become obsessed, repeatedly trying to force a relationship, and she had repeatedly rejected him. For him, no was not an answer. So he hunted her down. Police said he'd been loitering outside her house for hours, just waiting. A young woman's life, extinguished because a man couldn't handle being told no. The story wasn't just about a murder, it was about the dark side of being a woman online. Protests were held demanding justice for Sanaa. But for those of us in the neighborhood, the fear was immediate and personal. The open windows we once saw as relief now felt like an invitation to danger. The nights that followed were different. The air was still hot, but now it was thick with tension. Every creak of a floorboard, every dog bark made you jump. The women in my family were terrified. They stopped going out after dark. The thought that kept replaying in my mind was how easily it happened. A man with a bruised ego and a gun simply walked into a home and destroyed a family. Her crime was being visible and saying no. That summer the heat felt different. It was no longer just the weather, it was the suffocating weight of fear. Every sticky, humid night, I would lie in bed and think of Sanaa, and how the last thing she ever saw in her own safe space was the face of a man who refused to let her live without him. The next story is from a viewer on Long Island, New York. It's about how quickly a normal summer evening can dissolve into a nightmare. It's about the vanishing of a young mother named Sarah Good. The submitter writes, Sarah Good was my friend. It's still hard to say that in the past tense. She was the kind of person who was always smiling, 21 years old, a new mom who absolutely adored her baby girl. Being a young mother is hard, so when she had the chance for a rare night out, we were all happy for her. It was one of those perfect hot summer nights on Long Island, the kind where the air smells like cut grass in the ocean. She hugged her little one, kissed her goodbye, and promised she'd be back in a few hours. She walked out her door, and just vanished. She never came home. The next morning the frantic calls started. Sarah wasn't answering her phone. This wasn't like her. Not with a young child. A knot of dread started to form in my stomach. No one had seen her since the night before. By that afternoon she was officially a missing person. Her face was suddenly everywhere. On telephone poles and storefront windows. Sarah Good, 21-year-old mother, last seen. Seeing her smiling face on those posters felt like some kind of sick joke. Not Sarah. A few days later they found her car, abandoned on a street in Medford. That's when the hope that there was some simple explanation just evaporated. The police presence got heavy. The feeling of our safe, familiar hometown was gone, replaced by a creeping, ugly fear. The woods we played in as kids suddenly felt menacing. Search parties formed. Hundreds of us, friends, family, strangers, combed through those woods day after day calling her name. The heat was relentless, but we kept searching, terrified of what we might find. And then a local volunteer found her. Her body had been left deep in a wooded area, not far from her car. The news broke and a wave of grief and horror washed over the community. She hadn't just vanished, she had been taken. The details that came out were the stuff of nightmares. She had been brutally stabbed over 40 times. The man responsible was someone she met at the party that night, an ex-Marine named Dante Taylor. Prosecutors said he made advances and she rejected him. He couldn't handle it, and his response was an explosion of unimaginable violence. After the murder, he fled to Florida. His own mother reportedly told him to stay away until it was safe to come back. But DNA and cell phone records linked him directly to the crime and he was arrested. He was convicted and sentenced to life in prison without parole, but it felt like a hollow victory. It wouldn't bring Sarah back. That whole summer was colored by her absence. Every time I saw a missing poster still taped to a window, my heart would break all over again. Her face was a constant reminder of the predator who had been lurking among us, hidden in plain sight at a summer party. He looked normal. He talked to people. And then he revealed himself to be a monster. I can't go out after dark anymore without feeling a deep, primal fear. It's not fair, but it's the truth. Sarah just wanted a few hours of freedom. Instead, she walked out her door and into a trap. I think about her daughter, who will grow up only knowing her mother from photographs. And I think about my friend, whose bright smile was stolen from the world on a hot summer night, all because she said no. Some stories are terrifying not just because of what happened, but because of the agonizing wait for answers. This submission comes from a viewer in Kentucky who knew a young woman named Savannah Spurlock. Her story is a harrowing reminder of how a single night out can lead to months of uncertainty and a lifetime of pain. The viewer writes, "I live in a small town in Kentucky where everyone knows everyone. That's why when Savannah Spurlock went missing, it didn't feel like a distant news story. It felt like she could have been our daughter, our sister, our friend." Savannah was just 22, but she was already a mother of 4, including newborn twins. Her life was a whirlwind of diapers and sleepless nights. She was a dedicated mom who almost never got a break. Her story actually begins a few years back in January of 2019. But the horror of it all came flooding back last summer, when chilling new details from the investigation were finally made public. It's a story that proves some nightmares never really end. She decided to take one rare night for herself, her first night out since the twins were born. She went to a bar in Lexington with a friend. Before the sun rose the next day, she was gone, vanished into the darkness. The hours after she didn't come home were filled with rising panic. Frantic phone calls, texts that went unanswered. Her mother reported her missing and the search began. Police released surveillance images from the bar showing Savannah leaving with 3 men. Those grainy black and white photos were the last time she was seen alive. Who were these men? Where did they take her? The questions just hung in the air. The weeks turned into months. The search for Savannah was absolutely relentless. Police, search teams, and countless volunteers scoured fields, woods, and waterways. Her face was on billboards and news reports across central Kentucky. Her family gave these heartbreaking interviews, pleading for any information. We all watched, helpless, as this family lived through every parent's worst nightmare. The whispers started almost right away, and they all focused on one of the men she left with, a guy named David Sparks. The investigation showed that Savannah had gone back to his house after the bar. When police interviewed him, he told them a cold, calculated lie. He claimed Savannah had been at his house, but that she woke him up to ask for the address as if someone was picking her up. He said he went back to sleep, and when he woke up, she was just gone. In a recorded police interview that was later made public, you can hear him calmly telling detectives, "I hope she's all right." An investigator described him as stone cold, saying there was something about him that made the hair on the back of your neck stand up. But they had no body. No crime scene. Just a missing woman and a man with a story nobody believed. And so, the search continued. All through the spring and into the brutal heat of summer, the community waited. The waiting was its own form of torture. Then in July, 6 long agonizing months after she disappeared, the break came. Police got a tip about a foul odor coming from a property in Garrard County. It was a farm belonging to the parents of David Sparks. Investigators descended on the property. And there, buried in a shallow grave, they found human remains. It was Savannah. David Sparks was arrested. He was later charged with her murder and eventually pleaded guilty. He admitted he killed her and buried her on his family's property. He was sentenced to 50 years in prison, but he never gave a public account of what happened that night. He took that secret with him to his prison cell. Hearing that police interview last summer, knowing he was lying so calmly while her family was in agony, was one of the most chilling things I've ever experienced. Savannah was a victim, 100% innocent. She was a tired mom who just wanted one night of freedom. That one night turned into an eternity. Now, every humid Kentucky evening when the sun goes down, it's impossible not to think of her. It's a permanent stain on our town, a terrifying reminder of how a person can just be erased, leaving only questions and pain behind. This last story is different. It's not about a single moment of violence, but a slow, dawning horror. It's about a place meant for final rest becoming a house of nightmares. This story comes from a viewer who worked the night shift near a mortuary in Houston last summer, and what he witnessed. He writes, "I'm a security guard, and last summer I worked the graveyard shift for a building just a few blocks from the Richardson Mortuary in southwest Houston. It was a quiet gig. I do my rounds, watch the monitors, and listen to the city. But starting around April 2025 and getting worse through the summer, the rhythm around that particular block started to feel wrong. The first thing I noticed was the smell. It would just drift on the thick, humid Houston air. It wasn't trash or exhaust, it was a sweet, sickly smell. The kind of smell that, once you know what it is, you never, ever forget it. It was the smell of decay. At first I dismissed it. A dead animal maybe. But it lingered. Some nights it was so strong it would make my eyes water. Then the whisper started. I talked to the early morning sanitation workers, the delivery drivers. They were all talking about the mortuary. They'd lower their voices, looking over their shoulders like the building itself was listening. They talked about families being turned away, funerals being delayed for no reason. One morning, a driver told me a story that made my blood run cold. He said a family had shown up for a funeral, and when they were denied entry, the brother of the deceased woman went around back. He pulled out his phone and started recording. And the video, it showed his own mother's body just lying in a hot room, not refrigerated. He said she was sweating. There were gnats crawling on her. And she wasn't alone. There were at least 10 other bodies in there with her, left on the ground, some only half covered, surrounded by debris. When an employee confronted him, there was a fight and the brother got stabbed. That's when everything exploded. The police, the health department, the Texas Funeral Service Commission all got involved. The story hit the news, and the whispers I'd been hearing were confirmed in horrifying detail. The air conditioning at the mortuary had been broken for some time, possibly since a hurricane the year before. Instead of transferring the deceased, they had just left them. In the middle of a sweltering Houston summer, they left them to decompose. State regulators shut the place down immediately. But the horror didn't stop. Investigators found the place was a scene of desecration. It wasn't just mishandling, it was a profound violation of the dead. The owner's attorney claimed his client had been hospitalized for months, but that did little to quell the community's horror. The investigation continued and police made another grim discovery: dozens of cremated remains, cremains, that were never given to the families. By November, Houston police had to issue a public notice with a list of 57 names, hoping to find the next of kin. Some of those people had been dead for over a decade. All summer, I watched from my post as this nightmare unfolded. I'd see police cars, news vans, and the faces of the families who would show up, lost and heartbroken, just trying to find out what happened to their loved ones. The building is empty now. But it's not just an empty building to me. It's a place where the line between respect and desecration was completely erased. Something of that horror still lingers in the Texas summer air, a permanent, foul stain on the memory of the city. The line between the world we know and a world of unimaginable fear is thinner than we think. A classroom, a quiet street, a night out with friends, a final place of rest. Any of these can become the setting for a story that will haunt you for the rest of your life. The summer of 2025 was just one season, but for the people in these stories, it was an eternity. Their experiences are a stark reminder that the scariest things are often the most real. The reason I share these stories and the reason I started with my own is because there's a strange comfort in knowing you're not alone in your fear. There's strength in sharing these experiences, and that is why I need you. If you have a terrifying true story, an encounter you can't explain, something that still keeps you up at night, I want to hear it. My email for submissions is in the description below. I read every single one because your stories matter. They're a testament to what we can survive. Thank you for listening. If you want to hear more true scary stories, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Stay safe out there.